Hey everybody, welcome to the video. It's Tuesday, May 4th, and we're breaking down this 12-game main slate that we have over on DraftKings today. We got lots of good pitching options, we got some good bats as well, so it should be a pretty fun one. If you do find this video helpful in any way possible, please leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We did hit 8K subs, so I do appreciate that. You can follow me over on social media. You know where to find me in the bottom right corner of your screen. And if you want help with the channel over on Patreon, link is down below for that. If you do want to join the community, we have several hundred members over there, and you get projections, optimizer, ownership projections, rankings, cheat sheets, data sheets, the Discord community, and all of that fun stuff. Link is down below. I do cover other sports as well, but I think that's it for the shameless plug. So without further ado, let's dive into today's video. And as per usual, we will start with the pitchers and move on to the bats. And this is a really good pitching slate up top. We also have some decent SP2s. I have Nick Pivetta here as my main SP2 that I do like, but there's a couple of other options you could look to, like an Alex Cobb in a decent matchup versus the Tampa Bay Rays, but I do have a hard time trusting that guy, so I'm kind of rolling with another guy. I have a hard time trusting Nick Pivetta, but I really like this matchup here versus the Detroit Tigers. But we got three good aces on the mound: Jacob deGrom, Trevor Bauer, Aaron Nola. We got some of the best pitchers in baseball, arguably the best pitcher in baseball, Jacob deGrom. I mean, he's just been absolutely lights out this year. I mean, he's just got astronomically fantastic numbers, but yeah, you can't really go wrong with any of these pitchers today. Well, we'll start up top with Jacob deGrom, $11,100, a bit expensive, but he's pretty much worth every single penny. I mean, we could look at the game log, but you're just going to see just amazing numbers. There's just nothing bad to say about Jacob deGrom. 2.71 implied team total against him, 65% chance for a win, so he's a heavy favorite, low total against him, and a massive 10.5 K prop over in Vegas. We don't usually see those double-digit K props, so you know, Vegas is thinking we're probably going to sit around 10 to 11 strikeouts here, and I could easily see that surpassing that number because of how good he's been. Dating back to last season, he's got a 41.7% K rate. This season, it's pretty close to 50%. He's nearly striking out half the batters that he has faced this season, and it's absolutely incredible. About 95 pitches per game so far. We know the fastball velocity. We can see him get up to 100 some miles per hour. That's never out of the ordinary for him. 1.7 ERA, 2.1 xFIP, 2.2 SIERA. Just elite numbers all around. He's got a low walk rate, 14.2 Ks per 9. Matchup versus St. Louis is okay. I wouldn't say it's like an amazing matchup, but do you really care about matchups with Jacob deGrom too much? I don't personally. I mean, would I like him to be going up against a team like Detroit? Sure, but it's still, he can strike out. He can strike out 14 guys in the Cardinals. I don't think that would be anything anyone would be shocked about. So all about Jacob deGrom here. As long as the weather cooperates, there's a couple games that do have some weather issues, but that's something we kind of have to reevaluate around 5 to 6 p.m. because weather can do whatever the heck it wants by that time from when I record in the morning. So I'm not going to put too much stock into that. In yesterday's games, all the good games with the good bats got rained out. Or we had the Chicago Dodgers game that got canceled. Then we had the San Francisco Giants and the Colorado Rockies. That game got postponed as well. So that kind of sucked. Didn't leave us with many great games left, but still got to make do with what the slate happens to give you. Then, if you don't want to spend up for Jacob deGrom, we have Trevor Bauer, $10,700, and a good matchup versus the Cubs. They're typically a team I like to use righties against because they do strike out quite a bit versus them. And one thing I will mention is that the wind is supposed to be blowing in a little bit today. Again, we'll have to reevaluate that later the day progresses. But as of right now, it looks like it's going to be blowing in a little bit. Even if the wind was kind of neutral, I'd still like Trevor Bauer here. But wind's blowing in, so that's going to be a boost to the pitching. Trevor Bauer's obviously got fantastic numbers, not quite Jacob deGrom level, but great numbers in his own right. And another cool thing here is that this is going to be a doubleheader game, so we're only going to have 7 innings. And Trevor Bauer's a guy that can usually get to 7 innings, so you get that chance of the complete game bonus points as well. So that's something to keep in mind when rostering Trevor Bauer. You don't need those, but it's certainly in the cards there, and I do think he can pick up a win here. 2.1 implied team total against him. Now, the reason that is so low because it's only 7 innings, so that's why it's Jacob deGrom isn't quite that low, because if it was 7 innings for deGrom, you might see a number below 2, to be honest. But pretty heavy favorite, 8.5 K prop over in Vegas, around 105 pitches per game, 1.9 ERA, 3.24 xFIP, 35.4% K rate. Doesn't really walk too many guys, 12 Ks per 9. Fantastic numbers. The Cubs are striking out around a 26-27% clip this season versus righties, so no issues at all with either pitcher. I don't think I'm able to spend it for both because that's a lot of money to spend up. We're talking, what, $21,800, like nearly $22,000 for 2 pitchers, so probably not going to double spend up today because there's some decent bats I want in my lineups today. So I feel like you're just going to pair one of these guys with a guy like Nick Pivetta or maybe even Alex Cobb, or if you like another contrarian SP2, you can certainly go that route as well. But for the most part, we're probably just going to be picking between one, and if you can't decide, maybe it's a good idea to play 3 max today and do a deGrom Pivetta or a Bauer Pivetta, maybe even a Nola Pivetta if you want to. So getting into Nola at $10,400, he's definitely not on Bauer deGrom level, but he's still an ace in his own right, and he does have major upside. I think it was actually versus St. Louis where he had that 48-point game. Now, Nola can do that. I'm sure Jacob deGrom can have similar upside, but Nola's a guy where he's a good pitcher, but he just doesn't, I wouldn't say he's as quite consistent. He doesn't flash that ceiling as much as well. He's had some pretty pedestrian games mixed in there this season, and he doesn't really get blown up or anything, but you'd want more out of him from his price point here. But it's a good strikeout matchup versus Milwaukee, but they have been playing a little bit better baseball than they have early on in the season. Still only 3.4 implied team total against him. Slight favorite, 7.5 K prop over in Vegas, 3x Fib, 3.2 CRA, 30.7% K rate. Like his K rate's not quite on their level, and for only $300 or more, you can get Trevor Bauer. So the only reason you're going Nola today is if you want to get off the chalkier pitchers, because DeGrom and Bauer are going to be chalk. I don't think a lot of people are going to play both. Some might if you get a lot of value in your bats today, which is certainly possible. I'm just not sure if it's the route I want to go. But Nola's a nice contrarian pivot off of those guys, but that's kind of about it, because it's really hard to just plug in Nola when Bauer's only $300 more. Now, DeGrom's a few $100s more than Trevor Bauer, so it's not as easy to pivot directly from that, but still, I think he's definitely worth the extra chunk of change from the upside you get with DeGrom inconsistency as well. And then Nick Pivetta, $7,900. He is a guy I always have a hard time trusting. I hate recommending him, but this is a good spot versus Detroit. He's actually been playing some decent baseball this year. He had a really good game last time out. I want to say around 25, 26 fantasy points. And he gets a nice matchup here versus Detroit. Now, Detroit's been awful versus lefties this year. They're still not really great versus righties, but they've definitely improved so far this season. It's a young season, so obviously that can change rather quick, but it's still not good numbers. 29% K rate, 7% walk rate, 77 WRC plus, 275 WOBA, 263 on base percentage. Now, versus lefties, those numbers are absolutely horrendous. Like, we're talking a 38% K rate and a 33 WRC plus. So when I said they're not as bad versus righties as compared to lefties, they're still bad versus righties, but versus lefties, they're just absolutely horrendous. So anyway, I like Pivetta there. He's got decent strikeout rate. He can always deal with the walks, which is a bit of an issue because I hate rostering pitchers that walk guys and can have trouble with their command because that can just get you in a mess, and it makes you a sweaty mess watching those games because he just keeps loading up guys on base. But I don't think that should be a big problem here. Detroit doesn't walk too much. They do strike out a lot, and that sets up really well for a guy like Nick Pivetta. So I think he profiles very well in this matchup. 24% K rate, around 75 pitches per game since last season. I think he's going to be in line for the win as well. If he can go 5 innings, Boston's one of the best stacks on the slate, playing at home. I think Pivetta has a very strong SP2 today, and I'd imagine the most popular combo will probably be DeGrom Pivetta today, but Bauer and Pivetta will be very close to that. That could obviously change due to weather things or anything like that, but these are like the 4 guys I'm keying on. Nola, more of a contrarian pivot, so the 3 I like the most is DeGrom, Bauer, and Pivetta. But with that being said, I think we can move on to the bats because that's all I got for the pitchers. And as per usual, we'll start with the catcher position. We run the diamond and hit the outfield as well. And we'll start up top with an expensive catcher, Salvador Perez, $5,000 going up against a lefty, not in Cleveland. They're facing a lefty Cleveland pitcher at home. And the Royals offense, or just the Royals in general, have been playing very good baseball this year, and they're looking like one of the better stacks on the slate today. And they have a 4.81 implied team total, and Salvador Perez has been playing good baseball this year, 270 batting average, 240 ISO, 510 slugging, and catcher doesn't look like a great position today. I do have some cheaper options here that I do think are viable, but the numbers are horrendous. Small sample size, but they have negative WRC pluses. So I could see Perez just getting some ownership just because the catcher position doesn't look too great today. But if you're spending up for pitcher, typically you'd want to go cheaper at catcher. So I guess it just depends on your roster construction. But we have a very small sample size on this pitcher, but looking at his splits, it's only 5.2 innings, so you really can't put too much stock into this whatsoever. Around 96 on his fastball, 4.7 ERA, 24% K rate, didn't walk anybody, 320 batting average, 325 ISO, and a pretty high ground ball rate. Again, guys, keep in mind, this is a very small sample size, 42% hard contact rate, and 4.8 home runs per innings. And if that was his true number, like if that was a large sample size, that would be, you could sign me up for all the Royals here. Obviously, that number will come down, but I still think we can stack the Royals up here. Vegas does agree, and I think they're going to stay hot. So I do like Salvador Perez, $5,000, like pretty much all the righties on the Royals as well. I think they definitely make fine full stacking option. You can probably put lefties as well. Then the cheaper catchers, their numbers suck. Alex Jackson and Danny Jansen both have WRC pluses in the negatives this year. Jansen has a 0 ISO, Jackson has a 0 ISO, and Danny Jansen has a 0.021 ISO. WOBAs are about the same, and both have awful numbers, but Alex Jackson here. We know Travis Sarno's injured. I assume he's going to be in the lineup today. Going against Joe Ross, who does have like spurts of good pitching outings, but for the most part, he's a pretty average pitcher at best. And if they can get the Joe Ross early, the Washington Nationals bullpen, I think, sitting like right around a 4.85 xFIP this year, one of the worst numbers in the league. So I'm liking the Braves quite a bit today. 4.73 implied team total. It's not like amazing. I wish it was closer to 5, but if you just want a cheap part of that Braves stack, Alex Jackson I think is a viable option. But I'm not like over the moon about the Braves today, but there's definitely a few options that I think do make sense. Danny Jansen, keep wanting to say Jensen. Danny Jansen, $2,500, similar play to Alex Jackson. It's just on a different team. They have a lower implied team total. Corbin, though, you get the righty and lefty matchup, but that's really the only positive thing I can say about Danny Jansen. He's just purely a price play, and you hope he gets on base. Then dropping out of first base. If you're not spending it for Freddie Freeman, I like spending down a little bit at first base today. Unless you go with Freeman, $5,700, very expensive, but it's a good spot here versus Joe Ross, and we know Freddie Freeman's just an amazing hitter versus right-handed pitching, some of the best numbers in the league since last season. So I do like Freeman if you are using the Braves bats, and obviously Freddie Freeman's gonna be a really hard guy like Ronald Acuna to leave off stacks. Alex Kirilloff, $3,200. He's been playing just fine. 184 batting average is pretty low with 342 ISO, 526 slugging. I'm going to assume that batting average will come up as the time progresses. So $3,200, also eligible in the outfield as well. Still cheap, and the Twins are looking like a decent stack today. 4.75 implied team total for them today versus Cal Gibson, who hasn't been terrible this year, but still not like an amazing pitcher. Pretty average, which with spurts of above averageness, I would say. But the Twins' offense is pretty solid all around. Then Harold Castro, $2,500. Like I was saying, first base isn't that great today. If you don't spend it for Freeman, I would just take one of these cheap guys. He's also eligible at second base as well. I do like Nick Pivetta, but if you don't happen to use him, Harold Castro just hits in the middle of the order, and you get the lefty-on-righty matchup versus Pivetta, and Pivetta struggles more with lefties compared to righties, so he's purely a price play, but it's kind of gross. I'm more than likely going to find myself probably going with Kirilloff here or Freeman, just depending on how my roster construction looks like, unless another first baseman happens to pop up as the day goes on with a surprise start or something. Then second base, we have Whit Merrifield, $5,200. Like I mentioned with Salvador Perez, like the righties here versus Cleveland, and I think they make a pretty decent stack, one of the highest implied team totals on these slates, so you can sign me up. Brandon Lau, $4,300, going up against Alex Cobb, who I think will be a decent SP2 option today. I would imagine he'll have some ownership because people kind of like chasing that strikeout upside versus Tampa Bay, which I get, but Alex Cobb, not really a pitcher I get too concerned about. I know he has some decent strikeout upside, but $4,300 for Brandon Lau. I like his upside versus a righty here. I think the price is pretty cheap as well. Then Ty France, $4,000. So if you don't like any of the first basemen I mentioned, you could always put in Ty France at first base because I do like the Seattle Mariners stack today. I mean, I don't overall love their team, but there's a few options I like Kyle Seager, I said Corey Seager, Ty France, Mitch Haniger. You can even throw in Kyle Lewis in there as well. I think they're a decent stack today going up against Jorge Lopez, who's just not a very good pitcher, doesn't get a ton of strikeouts. A lot of contact and decent amount of hard contact as well. So I think the Mariners make a okay contrarian stack, only a 4.42 implied team total. I wish they were on the road in Camden Yards because that's a much hitter-friendly park, but still think the Mariners are a decent option versus some pretty weak pitching in Baltimore, in Seattle, I should say. And then going down to third base, we have Rafael Devers, $5,500. Boston right now is the highest implied team total in the slate. Obviously, that can change throughout the day, but it's a good spot here versus Michael Fulmer and the rest of the Detroit bullpen because we know that bullpen is not very good. I'm actually curious to pull up their xFIP number this season because I don't have that off the top of my head. But so far this season, the Detroit bullpen is sitting at a 4.68 xFIP, so it's not quite as bad as Washington, but it's near tops in the league of being some of the worst numbers. So if they can get the Fulmer early on, I mean, it should be a pretty good day for the Boston Red Sox. Hitter-friendly park in Fenway, and Rafael Devers has been crushing right-handed pitching this season, so I do like all the Boston bats. Even if I left a couple guys off, I probably still like them. I just don't want to list the entire slate. Kyle Seager, $4,300, kind of similar reasons to I mentioned with Ty France. Just a lefty-on-righty matchup here, and Jorge Lopez will struggle with the lefties. Then Hunter Dozier, $3,300, back-to-back 20-plus point games, I believe. Small sample size this season, 81 plate appearances, but he's only batting 147 with a 47 WRC+, but like what I've saw from him the past 2 games, and I like all the Royals today, so he's a cheaper option there, hitting not quite in the middle of the lineup, but more so in the bottom half, but I still think he's a fine option. You could also throw Hanser Alberto in there as well. He's a guy I kind of like to use versus left-handed pitching. Then going to shortstop, we have Xander Bogaerts, $5,300, like I mentioned with Rafael Devers. Do like all the Boston bats today, and he's been fantastic this season, batting nearly 350 with a 170 WRC+, and a 388 on base percentage, so I do like Xander Bogaerts here. Trey Turner's a little bit cheap, $4,100, going up against Oscar Noah, which I've only recommended using Yanoa like once this year, and I think he scored 2 points. He got that grand slam versus the Cubs. Outside of that, he's actually been pretty good. So it's not like I'm like trying to stack against him today, but there's a couple national bats that I think are fine plays. And Trey Turner, anytime he gets on base, you always have that stolen base upside as well. He's batting 310 this year, 390 WOBA, 236 ISO, and a 141 WRC plus. Plus you have the elite speed as well. So I do like Trey Turner because of the price point. And Dansby Swanson, if you are stacking up the Braves on the opposite side of this game, like the price point for the most part, he's a way to get to cheaper Atlanta bats outside of guys like Acuna, Ozuna, and Freddie Freeman. And speaking of Braves bats, we have Acuna, $6,000. And then we know the numbers. They're elite this season. 333 batting average, 469 WOBA, and a 375 ISO. And the list goes on. Dark green bars all around if you happen to look at his splits. But, I mean, like all the Braves bats here, just think he's a little bit expensive. Not sure I'm going to get there today, especially with the expensive pitchers we have. So I wouldn't say he's the main priority, but he's always a fine option if you have the money for him. JD Martinez, $5,800. Probably rather get the JD today, just because I like the Boston bats a little bit more as of right now. I can sway a little bit as the day goes on, but right now the Boston bats look to be in the lead for me. And JD's been killing righties this year. Typically, he's got great numbers versus lefties and some pretty good numbers versus righties. But this season, he's murdering right-handed pitching, so I don't see how that's going to change. And the the Detroit bullpen, whoever they throw at him outside of Fulmer, I mean, are you really that concerned? So you can sign me up for the Boston bats. Juan Soto, $4,900. Looks like he could be able to return today. There's no confirmation on that, but if he is back, he's pretty cheap. $4,800 for Juan Soto. I mean, I know Huascar Ynoa has been okay this year, but $4,800 for Soto, one of the best bats in the entire league. Yeah, I think he'd be a fine option if he's back. It's not confirmed yet, so that's something you have to keep your eye out on. But if there is some rumors that he could be back today. And Alex Verdugo, $4,500. Again, just loading up on Boston bats. He had the lefty on righty matchup here versus Fulmer. He's batting over 300 this season. Michael Brantley, $4,100. He's just a cheap lefty versus Domingo Germán. He's had 2 pretty good games back to back now, but he's the guy that can struggle at times. It's a hitter-friendly park in Yankee Stadium. I'm not really looking to use the Astros too much today, but guys like Jordan Alvarez, Michael Brantley, and Kyle Tucker, their price points do make them pretty viable plays today, so wouldn't hate maybe even a little lefty mini stack versus Germán, who can give up some pop. He's got decent strikeout stuff, but he can give us some pop or two, and hitter-friendly park. One of these guys can probably take him a yard. And Michael Brantley's been fantastic this year, batting .330 and, typical high contact guy, but he's had a good pop this year too. So he got a 191 ISO. That's came down a little bit, but still pretty good for Michael Brantley. Mitch Haniger, $300, just for reasons I mentioned earlier with Ty France and Kyle Seager. Do you think the Seattle Mariners are a decent stack today versus Jorge Lopez? And Haniger's been pretty good this year. A 278 ISO with a 270 batting average. Not bad for a guy that's $3,900. Austin Meadows, $3,700. Should be leading off here versus Alex Cobb. Just seems a bit too cheap for me with a guy like Austin Meadows' talent and potentially in the leadoff spot. So I do like Austin Meadows. Jorge Soler, $3,400. Again, just loading up on the Royals versus Cleveland today. I think they're all in pretty good spots. And then Kyle Tucker, $3,100. Very similar play to Michael Brantley. Just hits near the bottom of the order and doesn't hit for quite the high average and the high contact that Brantley does. But he has some pop in his bat as well. So for only $3,100, don't think Kyle Tucker is a very bad play. And a hitter-friendly park in Yankee Stadium. Hopefully you can take advantage of that short porch. But with that being said, guys, I think that's going to be it for the video. So I hope it was helpful. And if it was, make sure you leave a like. And if you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button. It really helps me out. I really do appreciate it. It helps with the channel over on Patreon. Link is down below for that stuff. But that's going to be it. Follow me on Twitter if you want. And I'll see you guys in the next video.